Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
Thinking about thinking. Why does my brain go here instead of there? We're talking about this very thing in the broadcast today, but I think it's a great tie-in to the subject of irrational fears or even rational ones. It's a series on Wondrium called The Science of Mindfulness, a research-based path to well-being. I was using the Wondrium app. I was listening to the second piece in the series about how our brains are hardwired by evolution to lean into psychological distress. And this leads us into anticipating danger even when there is none there, or finding coping mechanisms for trauma or perceived trauma. I've become a huge believer in mindfulness. I loved this series. I think we could all use tools to de-stress and recenter in this crazy world. It's my favorite streaming service, Wondrium, spelled Wondrium. Academically comprehensive and presented by experts who know what they're talking about. You can watch or listen whenever you want, wherever you want, on a huge variety of subjects. I know you're going to love Wondrium too, so I've arranged a special limited time offer for my listeners. A free month trial of unlimited access. To get this offer, sign up now through my special URL, wondrium.com/Seth. That's wondrium.com/Seth. There's so much you can learn in a month. Go to wondrium.com/Seth. A lot of people, even some atheists out there, don't believe in gods, but they are, in fact, superstitious in some way. Otherwise rational, perhaps, but they won't walk under the ladder. They might get a little weird about the umbrella opening in the house. They knock on wood. Why do these things continue to exist? This is a broadcast about famous and popular superstitions, and as best as we can figure out, what the origins of those superstitions are. Where did they come from and why? It's going to be a fun broadcast today. You know, I had this cat years ago. Her name was Blair. Just a sweet, precious, amazing cat. Probably the best cat I've ever had. I mean, my current cat is okay. His name is Cat. We spell it with a K. He's a white Persian. He is just so very Persian. I guess it's a breed thing, but he's friendly without really being friendly. You can only pet him for about 8 seconds before he turns on you. And he swats at you and claws at you and meows and runs off and just gets pissy. You know, and Blair was not like that. Blair would come sit on your lap and sleep on your neck and purr all the time. And you could pet Blair all the time. I mean, just the sweetest animal, right? And yet Blair was a black cat. Now, I think many of us have evolved past our concerns about the black cat. But we still associate black cats with the dark arts and with witchcraft and mysticism and even the devil himself. You don't see houses decorated with calico cats on Halloween, right? Nobody says, well, if a white cat crosses your path, that's bad luck. Nobody says that. The satanic panic wasn't freaking out about Satanists coming and stealing your Siamese cat to conduct blood sacrifice. By the way, that was a totally bogus warning. You will find few people who are as big an animal lover as the Satanist. But still, the black cat is usually associated with bad luck, dark omens, the fates. How did this happen? Well, actually, it's not true, at least in many parts of the world, that cats are bad luck. Especially in our history, the ancient Egyptians carved statues to Bastet. Bastet was the goddess of protection, pleasure, and good health. Now, Bastet was the daughter of Ra, and she's a cool goddess. She had the head of a cat and a very slender female body until nightfall. Bastet would then fully transform into a cat, and she would walk around and patrol so she could protect her father, the god Ra, from his nemesis, which was the evil serpent Apep. Apep was the god of evil and destruction. It's a great good versus evil story. So it was a cat, Ra's daughter, Bastet, the cat, who protected Ra from evil. But it should also be said that for the Egyptians and the Romans and many other cultures, black was also the color of grief and mourning. This is true in the United States even today. Black associated with death. There's a story in Greek mythology about Galenthius. Galenthius was this red and gold-haired servant of Alcmene. And there's this complicated story. I can't even relate it to you here. It's just confusing. But the short version is that there was an evil plan against Alcmene, and Alcmene's servant Galenthius found out about this plot against her master, and she thwarted the plan. Well, this pissed off some goddesses, and the punishment was they turned her into a cat. And then Galenthius the cat came to be a servant of Hecate, which was the goddess of the underworld. Now, in Greek tradition, the underworld was not necessarily a bad thing. Death in the underworld was just a natural part of life on this earthly world, right? They were associated closely. It wasn't like hell until the Christians came along. And the Christians were busy appropriating all the pagan stuff that people thought were cool and said, hey, let's take this version of it and let's incorporate it into Christianity and Christian mythology. And anything that's too creepy, we're just going to reject. Well, the whole underworld thing sounded an awful lot like hell to the Christians. They were hugely distrustful of anything associated with the underworld. And so the legend of Hecate changed in Christian culture from that of a respectable goddess to the queen of witches. And Hecate's black cat was the minion of a witch god. And you can see that perception of the black cat today. Thousands of years later, the black cat associated with witches. Black cats were claimed to be shapeshifters. Oh, yeah, I buy that. Cats can transform into humans and then back to cats at will. I'm sure they do this when we're not looking, by the way. But it was a great tool for sneaking around and spying for their hellish masters. If they had a plot they were trying to carry out, or they were worried about an enemy or whatever, they would just send their cat to go and sit on the couch, I guess, somewhere nearby to listen in. No wonder the Christians, the Catholics, the Quakers, the Anglicans, Baptists, so many other Christian denominations and factions, deeply suspicious and fearful of the black cat. During the Spanish Inquisition, the Catholic Church associated black cats with witchcraft. You and I both know how tolerant the Inquisition was when it came to witches, right? It was in 1843 Edgar Allan Poe published his famous short story, The Black Cat, which was a terrifying tale of abuse and hate, secrets, murder, guilt, retribution. The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. And of course, on top of that, you got all these crazy bogus stories about the Satanists who are lurking in the bushes, rounding up black cats every October to sacrifice them to the devil. It's little wonder that people are weird about the black cat. But take heart, my friends, because they don't always get a bad rap. In Scotland, if a black cat crosses your doorstep, you have received an omen of good fortune, of prosperity. If you see a black cat at a wedding, it means you're going to have healthy kids. In fact, black cats are symbols of fertility. In a great many cultures, Viking mythology has the chariot of Freya. Freya is the goddess of fertility, and the chariot is not pulled by horses. Freya's chariot is pulled by cats. I'm sorry, a chariot pulled by cats? As if all the cats are working together, going the same direction. Just let your imagination play with that one. We all know that the ancient sailors, and I think many modern ones, hugely superstitious. And many of the sailors of ships would want a black cat on board because black cats meant you had a better chance of good fishing, good weather, good fortune, and a safe arrival at your ports. And finally, did you know that black cats have a day on the calendar just for them? The 17th of August every single year is Black Cat Appreciation Day. So on the 17th of August, every year, owners are encouraged to dole out some extra treats. We see animal shelters. They are actually highlighting black cats for adoption. It's just a refreshingly positive day as people remind each other that black cats are just cats, right? Nothing more and certainly nothing less. And rather than associating them with demons and devils and blaming them for calamity, we just let them do what cats do, right? We let them melt into our laps and they can purr themselves and us into a state of zen and relaxation, perhaps even a peaceful sleep. They come and go at will. They seem to own the houses that you and I actually pay for, and they get us to pretty much do their bidding. Perhaps in this way, cats are indeed gods. And whatever their color, the cats probably know it. Okay, if you break a mirror, that's supposed to be 7 years of bad luck. But why? How did this come about? What is the origin of this superstition? Well, my first question was, how did people make a mirror back in ancient times? I mean, the production of glass, I think, is relatively new. So I just assumed they were looking at themselves in water, right? You put water in a bowl or something, or go to a lake or a river, a still kind of river, puddles and stuff, shiny rocks, and that's how you saw your reflection. Well, I was kind of partially right. Early mirrors were made of polished stones, often very shiny volcanic glass. Some mirrors were made out of copper thousands of years ago. It was suggested by the ancient Roman historian Pliny the Elder that the first manufactured glass was seen in Syria about 7,000 years ago. More concretely, archaeology reveals early man-made glass originating in eastern Mesopotamia and Egypt about 5,500 years ago. But the glass was not great. The ancient furnaces weren't really very hot, so the glass that was made was distorted and difficult to see through, right? But they were making more and more of it over those centuries. It was the Syrians who invented the blowpipe in the 1st century BCE. We've all seen blown glass, right? And so they would back these mirrors with lead, or they would use gold leaf, which of course helps you to see yourself in a mirror. When you and I look into a mirror, there's a metal backing on the mirror, otherwise we'd just see right through the glass. But again, it was pretty distorted back in the ancient times, so most people just used steel. And that was until a few hundred years ago. Imagine combing your hair, putting on your makeup, or flossing your teeth, looking into a big piece of steel in the bathroom. That's what people used to do. Mirror technology today is just ridiculous. I mean, it's really amazing. Of course, we have them all over the place in our houses. They're used in architecture. They're in the Hubble Space Telescope. You should go on Google and look at how the mirror or mirrors for the Hubble Space Telescope were manufactured. I mean, down to the micro millimeter, if those are even words. It's just amazing technology. But why would breaking a mirror cause you 7 years of bad luck? Well, it was believed back in olden days that if you looked into a mirror, you were actually transferring and storing part of your soul within the reflection. And this was believed by a great many people in Indian culture, the Africans, Greeks, Romans, many others. And so if you look into a mirror and it captures a part of your essence or soul, and then the mirror is cracked or broken, you shattered your reflection. You've also shattered at least part of your soul. Mirrors were a big deal back then. Magicians and conjurers would use mirrors to carry out these big optical illusions. People love bright, shiny things. And this was very much true back in the olden days. There was a famous clergyman named John Brand. He wrote back in 1777 about this ancient kind of divination by the looking glass. Mirrors used to touch the hand of God. But never fear, my friends. If you break a mirror and shatter your reflected soul, you are not condemned necessarily to 7 years of bad luck. There's still hope for you because your essence apparently remains within the shattered pieces or shards of mirror. And a lot of people gather up all the fragments that are broken. I guess to take a broom and a dustpan and you sweep yourself up into the dustpan and you take these pieces of mirror and you grind them down to dust. And then you can take that dust and plant it under a tree under the light of the full moon. And this will free your soul, your essence, your spirit, presumably to go up to heaven or to return to your body. It's a good thing. So you take the shattered pieces, you grind them to dust, and then you plant them under a tree under the full moon. Some cultures in Africa would take the mirrors and grind them down, and then they would throw that dust into rivers, thinking that the current of the water would carry away all the bad luck. Many of the early Romans used to think that the gods would watch us through the windows of mirrors. The gods, I guess, were just like peeping Toms. They would surveil us. They would look at us through mirrors to observe us in our lives. That's a little bit creepy. I suppose if there's a single mirror on this planet that you didn't want to break, it would be the world's largest man-made mirror. It's at the European Southern Observatory Telescope. This sucker is 14 feet in diameter. It's convex in shape, and it weighs a crushing 3.5 tons. 7,000 pounds. If that sucker cracks, consider yourself unlucky indeed. Okay, I've said this. I'm guessing you may have said this. So I make a statement about something I want to come true, or that I hope will come true. And whenever I say it, if I really do want it to come true, I'll finish by saying, knock on wood. Sometimes if I'm sitting at the table, I will actually physically knock. Well, I hope this happens, knock on wood. And I actually knock on the wood, right? Now, I don't think that this accomplishes anything. I'm not calling out to the knock gods. But it's like a reflex. It's like somebody sneezes. Even though I don't believe in spiritual blessings, I still say, bless you, right? I say knock on wood when I'm talking about a potential outcome. Where does that come from? Well, my friends, we are once again going back in time. We're going into the lands and the minds and the cultures of our ancient ancestors, this time the Indo-Europeans and the people who came before them. And they believed that spirits lived in the trees. So if you wanted to tap into the spirit world, you wanted to make some request or petition, you needed a blessing, you wanted to communicate something important to someone in the other world, a dead relative or a god or something, you would go into the forest and you would touch a tree. And apparently the gods were sort of particular about where they were going to take up residence. Oak trees were good. Ash trees, elder trees, hawthorn trees, these were considered the best conduits, like a phone booth to the gods. That's what these trees were. And the sound of knocking might wake a spirit that happened to be resting at the time. Hey, sorry to bug you, I'm here. I do have a request I would like to offer up. So knocking on the wood would wake up the god so you could have the conversation. The ancient Greeks would touch an oak tree when they called down divine protection from Zeus. There were some Native American tribes, they thought that oak trees were the dwelling place of the sky god. And when you talked about how much you wanted good fortune in your life, it was important to be humble. Don't say, well, it's going to happen. I predict it. Ain't no way it's not going to happen. Don't be haughty. Don't be proud. Don't be presumptuous. And the ancient ones required those who had gotten proud and haughty and egotistical and presumptuous to go and do their penance. You would go to the base of an oak tree and you would knock and you would beg forgiveness from the God of the sky. Also, in Old English folklore, it was said people would sneak into the woods when they wanted to tell each other secrets, right? If you're in the woods, no one can see you, you're off in the forest, and as you were talking, if you knocked on the trees as you spoke, that would cover your voice from anybody trying to eavesdrop on you. Some Christians have linked the knocking to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ because, of course, they have. Once again, Christianity decides to come in and say, oh, look, this is ours. If you knock wood, you are appealing to the wooden cross of Jesus Christ, the ultimate grantor of prayer and protection. That's Jesus. And of course, we can see the knocking of wood continuing worldwide today. You see it anywhere from Serbia to Russia. They do it in Latin America. And of course, here in the United States. And the message to the fates is this: knock on wood, please. Send me good fortune and let this thing I want to happen, happen. What about the good luck brought by the four-leaf clover? I always think of that song, right? I'm looking over the four-leaf clover. I can't remember the actual words to the four-leaf clover song because I always think of the ones we learned when I was a kid. So we took that four-leaf clover song and we learned different words that went, I'm looking over my dead dog Rover that I overran with the mower. One leg is missing, the other is gone. The third leg is scattered all over the lawn. You've never heard that song? Anyway, sorry. And there's a four-leaf clover song. Why is it good luck? And what the hell is a clover? Well, let's start there, okay? A clover is a plant of the genus Trifolium. That's a Latin word. It combines tres, or three, and folium, for leaf. There are about 300 different species of clovers out there. They almost always have 3 leaves, so they are trifoiled. But sometimes, on rare occasions, these clovers are quatrefoiled, 4-leafed. And already we can see that it's a very special occasion if you stumble upon one. It was the English politician and writer Sir John Melton. He wrote back in 1620, if a man walking in the fields find any 4-leafed grass, he shall in a small while after find some good thing. In other words, a 4-leafed fortune will bring even more good fortune. And this notion for luck and magic far predates the 17th century. We can go back to the time of the early Druids, where a 3-leafed clover was carried around. They used them as protection by the priests against evil spirits. Of course, the Druids saw evil spirits all around, so this clover was like a garlic necklace against vampires. So in this line of thinking, if you had a 3-leafed clover, and that could protect you against demons and warlocks and spirits of all kinds, well, a 4-leafed clover would be like leveling up, man. That would be even more powerful. Oh, look, here comes Christianity once again. Christianity looks upon these heathen druids, these non-Jesus worshiping types, and Christians say, well, how can we adapt this notion like we've adapted all the other pagan customs and traditions? Let us associate the 3 leaves of the clover with the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. This was during the 5th century when St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, he was over there trying to convert the Irish to Christianity, and he used the shamrock, the sacred clover, as an object lesson in his traveling sermons. He would talk about the Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost. And it's interesting because the Irish had a great many triad gods, or 3-sided deities. These are gods which appeared in 3 different forms, kind of like Yahweh is the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, right? And that actually helped St. Patrick relate to the people, because when he talked about the Christian Trinity, it sort of already resonated with them. They're used to these triad gods. By the Middle Ages, the popularity of the lucky 3- and 4-leafed clover had spilled well beyond Ireland and into regions all around it. The plants were said to ward off demons and witches. Kids were told clovers might help them to see fairies. And so everybody started scanning the fields for clovers of good luck, especially clovers bearing 4 leaves, the ones that were so rare and special. So how common is a 4-leafed clover? Well, the ratio is 1 in 10,000. So if you stumble across a 4-leaf clover, you are indeed very fortunate. And it's said that Ireland has more 4-leafed clovers than any other place on earth, which makes it very understandable why people so often talk about the luck of the Irish. Good luck and good things coming your way. 4 leaves of fortune that you can carry around in your hands. I have actually met people who are weird about opening an umbrella inside. A popular superstition, but I thought, well, no one still worries about that, right? Don't open the umbrella indoors. There are people who are still freaky about this. But why? Where did this superstition come from? Well, the first recorded usage of the term umbrella dates back to the early 17th century. But umbrellas, or parasols, they reach further back, way into recorded history. It was the people of the 5th dynasty. Back around 2400 BCE, they would fashion umbrellas with palm leaves. They would stick them on this long handle, and they would use these big tree leaves to shield themselves from the rain and the sun. The word umbrella is a combination of early Greek and Latin words. Ombrio means rain, and umbra means shaded or shadow. The word parasol comes out of the French. Para means shield, sol means sun, shielding out the sun. Conversely, they had a version specifically for the parasol that blocks out the rain. I'm sure I'm going to screw this French word up. Parapluie. That comes out of the Latin word for rain, pluvia, okay? It was back in the 18th century that we started to see the metal spoked versions of the umbrella. Those little spokes under the fabric, the spokes that tear through the umbrella, and then you try to jam them back into those little pockets before they stab you in the eyeball. Anybody else struggled with the metal spokes of a torn umbrella? These clumsy contraptions were really, really sketchy back in the 1700s. And if one of those suckers malfunctioned, and you were in close company, you could genuinely, seriously injure somebody. And because people were gathered more closely inside, even a minor malfunction of an umbrella could really ruin your day, right? It could interrupt a gathering, it could bother people nearby, or you could just hurt somebody. You could scratch them on the face or whatever. So if you opened the umbrella inside, prepare yourselves for misfortune. By the way, do you use the smaller umbrella, like those little portable ones that are about 1.5 feet long? Or do you have the great big 3-foot umbrella? Because I kind of prefer the small ones, but the big ones really do offer more square footage, more protection from the elements. I don't know, do you have a preference? I will be totally honest, and I'm kind of self-conscious about admitting this. Really, the only time that I use an umbrella, when I'm not holding it over Natalie and me as we go out together on a date or something in the rain, but I use it to try to get my dog to pee outside when it's raining. Now, Linus hates the rain, okay? It doesn't matter how full his bladder is, how miserable he might be, how bad he has to go. If it's raining, he hates to go outside and do his business, okay? So I'm begging like an idiot. Come on, puppy, let's go outside. Come on, is it going to be okay? Let's go outside. It's just rain. It's just water. No problem. No. No, he doesn't go. He just plants himself on the carpet and says, no way. So I go grab the umbrella. We have this one umbrella, great big one. It's big black umbrella. And I pop it open on the porch and I grab Linus and we go out to our little garden and I've got a little tree, right? We call it Linus's tree. He likes to pee on this tree, except when it's raining. So I'm out there like an idiot holding the umbrella with the dog underneath. His feet are planted in the mulch. And I'm like, come on, baby. Come on. You got to go pee. Be a good boy. Be a good boy. I turn into this blathering, begging idiot. My success rate is horrible. I might get him to go 1 in 4 times. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take that little detour, but I was just the umbrella. When I talk about it, that's kind of what comes to my mind. Still to come on our Superstitions broadcast, why is it bad luck to walk under a ladder? Why do we say bless you when you sneeze? I think most people may know this one, but we're going to talk about it. Why are horseshoes considered to be lucky charms? And what's up with the number 13? You go into a tall building, you look at the elevator numbers. How often is there no 13th floor, even though there is a 13th floor? Where does our fear of 13 come from? More superstitions coming up next. And we're back talking about superstitions. Why is it bad luck to walk under a ladder? Now, I was thinking about this when my first thought was one of safety. You know, if there's a ladder there, especially if somebody's on the ladder and that thing slips, you could get really seriously hurt. I mean, that would be unlucky. That's kind of what I assumed about this particular superstition. And of course, as usual, I was totally wrong. The ladder thing takes us once again back thousands of years, about 5,000 years, to ancient Egypt. Now, the Egyptians had all kind of cool ideas about the shapes of supernatural things. And they considered the triangle to be sacred. Triangles represented a trinity of the gods. And so if you pass through a triangle, that was considered an offense to the gods, a desecration of the gods. Now, grab a ladder and set it on the floor, lean it against a wall. What shape does it make? Of course, it makes a triangle. Walk under the ladder into the triangle. You have now desecrated the gods. That's certainly bad luck. By the way, Egyptians used to leave ladders inside the tombs of dead people. And the thinking was that with the dead in there, they needed a way to climb upward to reach the heavens. So they would prepare the tomb, and then right before they sealed it shut, they would leave a ladder inside. Oh, look, centuries later, here comes Christianity, which of course has the Trinity, all right, the triangle. So the followers of Christ said walking beneath or through the Trinity might be blasphemous. Do that at your own peril. Finally, back in the 1600s, it was thought that ladders partially resembled the gallows that were used at public hangings. So the condemned would be walking to the gallows, their last walk, and that last walk included going under a part of the frame of the gallows. And anything related to those particular hangings was kind of a bad omen. I don't know about this one. Like, I pictured gallows in my mind, and I don't see ladders. I think that legend deserves greater scrutiny. Have you been cursed under the ladder? Did you walk underneath and now you have bad luck? Do not despair, my friends. Your curse can be reversed. If you want to do this, legend says you got to cross your fingers and you keep them crossed until you see a dog. Now, if you're still at the ladder, you can try walking backwards under it the way you came. That reverses the bad luck. Or you can make a wish while you are under the ladder and then say the words bread and butter while you're standing underneath it. Bread and butter refers to the basic needs of life. Walking under a ladder. What a stupid, stupid jinx. Why do we say bless you when we sneeze? I think most of us have a basic grasp on this one, but there are various legends. Quickly, the custom that we're familiar with allegedly dates back to Italy in the 6th century. There was the a plague, a pestilence throughout the land. And the symptoms included severe and chronic sneezing. So Pope Gregory the Great issued this proclamation that people should be defending themselves against all these sneezed out particles, and that defense would be them saying, "God bless you." And if you were by yourself and you sneezed, you were supposed to say, "God help me," kind of a prayer for your own safety. A version of this practice could also be seen during the Black Death, the bubonic plague of the 14th century in Europe. Those afflicted with plague were often doomed to die. And so if you said, "God bless you," it was kind of a deathbed benediction. It's said that the early Druids believed that the human soul might be thrown out of your body during a sneeze. And if you sneezed out your soul, there was a vacuum left within you, and in that space, demons might take up residence. So bless you or God bless you was a defense against becoming possessed. There's also been a widely held belief that when you sneeze, your heart stops at that moment. And so God bless you is supposed to restart the heart, or at least encourage the heart not to stop. It's the continuation of life. God bless you. Bless your heart. By the way, that's total crap. The American College of Cardiology has weighed in on the whole heart stopping during a sneeze question. No, the heart doesn't stop when you sneeze. Now, there might be a tiny delay between heartbeats. That second beat might be a little more intense. It's catching up. But no, your heart does not stop during a sneeze. Here's some more sneeze trivia. Once a sneeze begins, it's impossible to stop it. You cannot prevent it. It's a total reflex. Sneezes can travel at 100 miles an hour and project forward 5 feet. But why don't we ever sneeze while we sleep? Well, there's a reason for this. The nerve reflexes of the nose sleep with us, right? They also go to sleep. And so that's why we don't sneeze as we lie there in bed unconscious. There's a percentage of the population, about 1 in 4, 25%, that sneezes when exposed to a sudden bright light. That's weird. You look up, there's a bright light, you start sneezing. And if you've ever sneezed while plucking your eyebrows, there's a reason for that too. The nerve endings in your face get irritated, and that signal from the eyebrow area actually reaches the nasal nerve. It's all connected. So you tweeze your eyebrows, and all of a sudden you feel the urge to sneeze. Just a little sneeze trivia for you there. All right, here's a fun one. Actually, it's stupid and ridiculous, but it's still fun to talk about. I don't know how many times you and I have gotten into an elevator of a relatively tall building, and we look at the elevator buttons. 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. Hey, wait a minute. Where's the 13th floor? This is really pretty common, especially in older buildings. I was kind of browsing around. I saw some data from the New York City Housing Authority. This data is from 2015. And that data shows that out of over 600 buildings that were tall enough to qualify, only 55 of those buildings, 9% of the buildings over 13 floors in New York City actually have labeled their 13th floor. Somebody explain this to me. Does the fact that there is not a button in the elevator mean that it's not the 13th floor? It's just stupid. Or usually it's stupid. I mean, I understand kind of why some of these people are doing it, especially when they're trying to sell condos and stuff. The fear of the number 13, it actually has an official name, triskaidekaphobia. Recent polls show that hardly anybody is really genuinely afraid of the number 13, but building developers still want to err on the side of caution. A few realtors have said that they have a harder time selling properties on 13th floors of buildings, right? Nobody wants bad luck at home. Triskaidekaphobia explains why some people won't sit on the 13th row on an airplane. In fact, there's an airline At least one, I know Ryanair of Dublin, does not have 13 on the rows of airplane seats. So if you get your ticket, it's like 10, 11, 12, 14, 15. Even though the row is 13th, it does not say that on your ticket. Some people refuse to stay in hotel rooms that have a number 13. Some people have been said to jump over or skip over the 13th step on a staircase, or even to scan the culture for codes that reveal the number 13. I think there's actually a Jim Carrey film called The Number 13, where he looks around, his pattern-seeking brain actually perceives 13 is all around him. And of course, when does Jason Voorhees eviscerate and decapitate all of his victims? Of course, he does so on Friday the 13th. And there are some interesting reasons, I think, for this fear of 13. Societies have long associated the number 12 with completeness. It's a good, solid, complete number. There are 12 days of Christmas, 12 months in the zodiac, 12 gods of Olympus, the 12 tribes of Israel. We buy our eggs by the dozen, right? 12 is nice and neat. It's a tidy, complete, neat little number. But 13, well, according to Dr. Phil Stevens at the University of Buffalo, he's an anthropologist. Many people believe that the number 13 superstition actually stems back to Jesus Christ and the Last Supper. Now, the meal took place on a Thursday, right? But this was a precursor to the Friday crucifixion. That was a bad day. How many guests attended the Last Supper? You guessed it, there were 13 people. Ancient monks were chagrined at years which had 13 full moons instead of 12. Because the monks were in charge of managing the calendars. And as the 13th moon happened every 3 or 4 years, it totally upset things. Crap. This is going to mess up my calendar. Now I've got to adjust and make allowances for this 13th full moon. And then there's the Hammurabi Code. That legend says there is an omitted 13th law from the ancient text, which was penned by Hammurabi, the 6th king of the first dynasty of Babylon. That's total crap, by the way, because there are no numerations of laws in the Hammurabi Code. But that's what the legend says. And for a great many cultures, 13 is not an unlucky number. In fact, it's quite the opposite. How many people sat at the round table with King Arthur? There were 12 knights. King Arthur, who was also a knight, he made 13. And yes, there are 12 signs in the zodiac, but there are 13 constellations. In Judaism, 13 is the age for a boy's maturity. And the bar mitzvah. The U.S. began with 13 colonies. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in this country. In Chinese, 13 translates assured growth or definitely vibrant. And of course, one of my favorite films is the John McTiernan Viking movie called The 13th Warrior. It's a number, folks. It's just a number. It is not imbued with dark power, no matter what the elevator buttons may or may not say. If the buttons skip from 12 to 14 and you exit on the 14th floor, your brain still knows exactly where you are. Why are horseshoes considered to be lucky? The lucky horseshoe. I don't hear this one a whole lot anymore. I still find it interesting. And there's even a big write-up about this at the Kentucky Derby Museum, right, where the horse races take place. Why are horseshoes considered good luck? The most popular explanation is the legend of Saint Dunstan, a bishop of London, the patron saint of blacksmiths. Saint Dunstan was allegedly approached by the devil, and the devil was in disguise. He had disguised himself as a maiden. So he walked up with his horse and said, "Hey, shoe my horse, please." But St. Dunstan saw through the devil's disguise and knew he was talking to Satan himself. And he grabbed a pair of blacksmith's tongs and he grabbed Satan by the nose. And the devil struggled and shouted as St. Dunstan painfully hammered a horseshoe onto Satan's cloven hoof. And the devil cried and wailed and protested, "Remove this shoe from my hoof. Let me go, let me go." And finally, St. Dunstan agreed to let the devil go, but only after Satan agreed to one condition. The devil could never again enter any place that had a horseshoe hanging over its door. Charles Dickens actually referenced this legend in his famous poem, A Christmas Carol. And there's a longtime popular folk rhyme about this particular transaction. St. Dunstan, as the story goes, once pulled the devil by the nose with red-hot tongs which made him roar that he was heard 3 miles or more. It's also interesting to note what the early horseshoes were made of. They included metals that were often thought to have magical powers. The magnetism of iron, for example, that was considered especially magical. The oldest known horseshoes were made out of plants and leather. Modern horseshoes are usually made out of steel and lightweight aluminum. It depends on what your horse is doing. If they're out to pasture, that's one thing. If they're a racing horse, that's another. And when the horse is done with its shoes, you can grab those horseshoes and place them strategically at the entrance of your home above the door. Display it where it can be seen by all who approach in case the devil himself comes to visit. It's often said that bad things happen in threes. So you hear that someone has passed away, somebody at the office, somebody in your neighborhood, somebody on the family tree, and oh, wait a minute, I saw on Facebook that somebody else had passed away. There will soon be a third. 3 people will die this week or this month or this quarter or whatever. 3 will die because bad things always happen in threes. There's a reason that people do this. 3 is a strong number in the human brain. Just like we talked about with the number 12, the number 3 signifies balance. But beyond our fascination with the number 3, perhaps there's something else going on. The Holy Trinity is a 3. In writing, especially when you're writing comedy, there is something called the rule of threes, this idea that a trio of events is funnier than just 1 or 2. We've all heard the jokes, right? A priest, a rabbi, and an atheist walk into a bar. That joke's supposed to be more funny because 3 characters are involved in the joke. We got the 3 little pigs, the 3 musketeers. Let's make a deal, right? Do you want door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? We seem to need the third door in the game show to make things feel more complete. Not too few and not too many. The perfect 3. But a lot of our obsession with 3 actually brings us back to human evolution. You and I are evolved primates, and we are pattern seekers. So let's go back to the news of the death of someone we know or somebody we know about. One person passes away, another person passes away during a certain period of time. Given the statistical probabilities among all the people on our radar that fall into a certain category, pop culture, the city that we live in, our family tree, people that we know at work or casually, we are always scanning the horizon for things that we can link together in our brain. So when we see a third connection or a coincidence, we just stop counting. Like on a planet of 7 billion people, if there are literally millions of famous people, and let's say you reduce that number way down, let's call it tens of thousands of people, sports celebrities, Twitter celebrities, movie stars, TV stars, music stars, etc. Given the fact that the average lifespan is 79 years, it is inevitable that we're going to see at least 3 names that we recognize as celebrities in the obituaries within a relatively short amount of time. And this plays out even in casual circles, whether it's family or friends or other associates, right? Could be days, could be a month. Our psychology is primed to find things in threes, and then when that third thing happens, we just click off the scanner and we say, aha, there it is. There's number 3. And if a fourth piece of misfortune happens shortly after, we're less inclined because we're primed to say bad luck comes in threes. Nobody knows exactly where the superstition about bad luck in threes comes from. Some people have linked it back to a 3 strikes of a match superstition from the mid-1800s. That legend said that if there was a war going on and there were 3 soldiers in a foxhole, and they all light a cigarette from the same match, that one of those 3 would be dead in combat within the next 24 hours. There's another version that says that whoever was third on the match would die by gunshot. So back in the 1800s, it was often considered bad luck for 3 people to light their cigarettes using the same match. Of course, much of this death in threes thing is hugely subjective. I mean, let's go back to the celebrity model, okay? It's considered bad fortune if a famous young person or even a middle-aged person died and you saw the obituary in whatever publication. But let's say that somebody famous passes away at 90, right? 90 years old? Well, that's not really bad luck. That person lived over a decade over the average. The global average 79, they lived to 90. Sure, it's sad for his family and his fans, but is it really bad luck? It could be said. That's fortune that many of us would welcome, a nice, long life of 9 decades. Anyway, we all get it. We're pattern seekers, and we scan the noise looking for things that seem connected even when they are not. We see the faces on Mars and the Virgin Mary on a grilled cheese sandwich, and we see events that happen in relative proximity to each other. And if we step back, I think it would actually be weird if we didn't have an ocean of events that were populating our brains. When you think about just the sheer number of names that we know and faces we recognize, it would be weird if we didn't see people experiencing some fate in a kind of cluster, right? I mean, there are 16,000 car crashes every day in the United States. I mean, that's 6 million crashes every single year. It would actually be weird if we didn't see at least 3 names that we recognize associated with a car crash. Over 600,000 people die of cancer every single year just in this country. That's 1,600 people a day dying of cancer. It would be weird if we did not see several people who were afflicted with and perhaps even died of cancer in a relatively short amount of time. Statistically, it's just going to happen. And yet our pattern-seeking brains want to assign some greater connection, a deeper meaning, often telling us that it's the fates at work and not mere coincidence. Bad news always happens in threes. Hopefully nothing bad happens to you, my friends. Fingers crossed. Hey, wait a minute. Why do we cross our fingers for good luck? I mean, even people who don't actually physically cross their fingers will still say it when they want something good to happen. You know, hey, I did pretty good at the job interview this morning. Fingers crossed. Hope I get it, right? I'm hoping the car will start in the cold weather. Fingers crossed. My fantasy football team might just go all the way, fingers crossed. We do this all the time. We say this all the time. Why do we do it? Now, of course, it doesn't always mean good luck when you cross your fingers. Sometimes it can mean that you are lying to somebody. So if you say something is true, you crossed your fingers, especially you stuck those crossed fingers behind your back, you're supposedly off the hook for your deception, or at least it's supposed to make you feel less guilty about being a liar. Before Christianity, superstitious people would create something called a solar cross to ward off evil spirits. So 2 people would take 1 finger each And they would meet up and they would cross their fingers and then make a wish. That was the power of their cross, that the wish would come true. And crossing fingers was about more than just good luck. It was about divine protection. In fact, there were some folklorists who said that the crossing of fingers was linked to the Christian cross of Christ. So if Christians were freaked out about some sort of a demonic or devilish threat or sickness or witchcraft, they could cross fingers and signal to God and everybody else that they were seeking divine protection. And this may explain why if you cross your fingers behind your back, that has become associated with deception. Fingers crossed in plain view, that's a calling out to goodness and truth, divinity. But fingers crossed secretly behind the back might be a kind of upside-down cross, representing the antithesis of goodness and truth and divinity. The front cross is honesty. The back cross, the hidden cross, the upside-down cross, that's evil deception. Another reason to think that crossing your fingers is linked mostly to Christianity is that most of the non-Christian religions of the world don't practice this. In fact, if you cross your fingers in some places around the world, you could get into real trouble. For example, let's say you cross your fingers in Vietnam. Well, congratulations, you have just made the sign of genitals and fuck you. So don't do that in Vietnam. You might just get your ass kicked. I'm just saying. I looked into other hand gestures in this country that you don't want to do in other parts of the world. Don't dare give somebody a thumbs up in Iran or Afghanistan. That is their equivalent of the middle finger. Okay, so don't do that. It's rude to point at something with just your index finger in Malaysia. So apparently there people will point with two fingers or they'll use the thumb. Don't do the OK sign in Brazil. It's not an O and a K. It's essentially an asshole. You're making a rectum in Brazil. You don't want to do that. Apparently, some European nations aren't keen on the thumb and the pinky in the air, like we do at rock concerts, hang loose, man, rock on. That gesture, do not do that in some places throughout Europe. Apparently, you've made the symbol of a castrated bull. If you do it to a man, you're telling him that his wife is cheating on him, and everybody knows it. I don't buy this one. Somebody confirm or disconfirm this one, because that just sounds like total crap. If you're in the Philippines, don't do that motion with your index finger to beckon somebody to come here. Hey, come here. And you do this thing with your index finger. Do not do that in the Philippines. Apparently, that is how you summon a dog. And it's considered insulting. Just a few helpful cultural and safety tips for you here on the broadcast. Anyway, that's just a few of the origin stories of various superstitions that we see out there. So next time somebody refers to one or you see the umbrella inside or the ladder to walk under or whatever, now you kind of know where all of that came from. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you back here next week. Be safe. Take care.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.